All right, so today I had several video ideas, and if YouTube was my regular job, I would have dedicated a video to attention deficit disorder, autism, the fact that paychecks aren't real paychecks anymore, and the one that I'm going to be talking about because it came up in a conversation that I was having with two different people today. So while I was thinking of how I was going to put this video together, my first thought was, if everyone you know will, I don't know if people want to admit this because there is a certain stigma, which I'm going to talk about, with being homeless. As a former homeless person myself, I've been, I've had that label put on me before. So, the first guy I was talking to told me that at the restaurant that his girlfriend works at least three of the people who are serving tables there do not make enough money from their 40-hour-a-week job, sometimes more hours, in order to afford housing. So they're saving up in order to be able to get an apartment. The second guy I talked to said he's prepared to move into his car. He bought ironically, the exact same car that I did for the exact same reason, to put a mattress in the back of his car and be able to sleep in it. When I see people sleeping in the driver's seat of their vehicle in the parking lot at Kroger's, I ask myself, how are you doing this to yourself? And there's no choice. So when I thought about what car I wanted to make certain that if I lose my job, I can at least stay in my car for the next 6 months. But this brings up the greater argument, is that if they want to pay these kinds of wages, of this girl and this that went viral in this video that you guys were seeing, was saying no to a job that pays $37,000 a year. The Arizona minimum wage is $14.70. That's not even $30,000 a year for a full-time job. The average cost of an apartment right now in Arizona is $24,000 a year for a one-bedroom apartment. Minimum wage pays 30. Less than 30. I mean, how are you supposed to survive on paying all of your other bills with $500 left over at the end of the month? You're not. And that's what's making this crisis in America. We have so many crises in this country right now that it's almost shocking that no one else is talking about these things. It bothers me. And it bothered my coworker enough to tell me that he was thinking of ways. He stays up at night thinking about these things, but he knows he can't do anything about it. So I have four talking points here, and I can relate to all of these talking points because it's what I talk on the channel about all the time. So let's start with our first one. Homelessness in disguise is something that's very, very cruel. And I have been saying this on my channel now for years. This isn't something new. I've talked about soft homelessness in this country a lot because I've been soft homeless way more than I've been full homeless on the street. Soft homeless is my phrase for you're not sleeping in a shelter or on the sidewalk, but you don't own a pair of keys. If the homeowner doesn't let you crash on their couch for the night, you have to sleep outside. And would include in soft homelessness sleeping in your car because you're not living in a home. You're living in your transportation, which for most people is not going to be considered a home. So, with that said, let's get into talking point number one. Many people living in cars don't fit the stereotype of homelessness. They have jobs, families, and responsibilities, but can't afford housing. This creates a growing population of the invisible homeless. And I've talked about the invisible homeless on many, many occasions on this channel because once you don't have money, you become an invisible problem for the government. And in order to deal with that problem, our community has the ironically named community outreach program, right? They have these vehicles that drive around looking for the homeless and they take them to a better place. They drop them off And a few days later, they come right back because where they put them is not where they want to be. So these community outreach vehicles are part of the police department, but they don't say police. But if I had to rename them, I would call them the homeless police because that's really what they are. They're looking for them actively in order to help them. But the reality is that this country forgot that homeless people are people. The moment you don't have a home, you get your human card revoked because even stray animals get taken to the pound. We don't do that for human beings. If you can't afford a home, it's a personal failure on your record. And I've been there. When people looked at me and like, well, you have a job. How come you can't afford a place to live? What does my job pay me? Is my job paying me $37,000 a year when we know that's not a living wage? In this article, she goes on to say that $125,000 per year is the equivalent to what 60,000 was 10 years ago, 20 years ago. If I was making the kind of money that I'm making right now, I would be considered to be a very well off person. In today's money, it's not even close. It isn't even near what it was 20 years ago. And this is what the people around me in the technology field were making 20 years ago. I remember looking at these guys and thinking to myself, someday I'm going to have a big effing truck, a big effing house, and a super effing hot wife. Guess what? That has never happened, and it will never happen. Unless you wake up tomorrow, every member of the proletariat wakes up tomorrow morning and says this to themselves: I'm not going to work. That's the only way we change the system. You wake up tomorrow morning and you tell yourself, am I really alive on what they're paying me? Can I afford anything? Am I comfortable financially? Do I have any job security? The answer is no to all those questions. And the more you try to convince yourself that you're okay, the more corrupt the system is going to become. In fact, I was reading something this morning where they were talking about getting rid of certain benefits in order to save money, and this would impact workers in this year. Getting rid of health care for some workers. My company currently is dealing with these financial problems by making certain that they hire everyone as a contractor. Everyone, every new hire in the coming year is going to be a contractor that gets paid no benefits, gets paid an hourly wage, and is a 1099 worker. That's how they're going to resolve having to spend money. That also gets them out of having to provide any sort of technology to them. In fact, today I was looking at where I needed to recover a computer from a former employee at. I was looking for where they were because they were so remote. This person that they hired as a full-time professor, their title is professor. They're living in the middle of Mississippi in a trailer on a lot with no power. This is a professor. This is a person who went to school for at least 8 years, living in a trailer on a dirt lot in Mississippi in the middle of nowhere. I was beside myself. They hired that person in that place because they would take the desperation wages that they wanted to offer them. And on top of that, they changed their job to part-time. That's why they're getting rid of their technology. Anyhow, moving on to our second talking point. Job loss can force someone out of their home. The rising cost of living has turned even basic shelter into a luxury that fewer people can afford. So this morning I used the analogy that someone left on the channel in the comment section. We're all fine. We're all the little goldfish inside of the bowl, right? We are all floating around in our bowls right now, And I used this analogy yesterday too, is that we're in the bowl, we're in the wage cage, right? We can breathe in the wage cage. It may not be comfortable because it's small as hell, like me. You got a toilet and a bed, but at least you can be alive in there. The second that someone pours you out of the wage cage, you're going to flop around for air or you're not going to make it. And there's going to be, I wish they would release the statistics of all of the people that passed while they were on the street because we see them every day. On my way to work in the morning, I can pass anywhere from 10 to 20 homeless people just between the Circle K and my job. And these people aren't okay. These people are in the worst mental shape that you can possibly imagine. And I know because I've been one. Your thoughts are racing, you're scared, you don't know what you're going to eat. No one's going to hire you as a homeless person. And you're stuck there because you can't help yourself out of being homeless. It takes an extraordinary amount of effort in order to get back into a normal life of working every day at a job you hate. So, moving on to my third talking point. Living in a car isn't just inconvenient, it's isolating, unsafe, and exhausting. I mean, whenever I go to the park and I'm live streaming in the park that's just across the street from my house, there are cars parked in everywhere with people living inside of them. And the reason for that is they don't have anywhere else to go. And most people aren't going to bother you if you're not in the way. But that's just what they have to do. I think California has places, fenced off areas where you can come and live in your car where they provide basic cooking, porta potties, and safety. They close the gate at the end of every night so that no one tries to get in and hurt you inside of your car. But if the state acknowledges this, that they have to build these homeless encampments for people who can afford more than a tent, but can afford to live inside of their cars. And all of these people, I saw a Vice documentary where they followed a woman who lived in one of these places, and her morning routine started the same. You think that she was just a normal person. She sleeps in that caged in area with all the other homeless people. Then she gets up in the morning, goes to the gym, takes a shower at the gym, and then she goes to her 40-hour work week. I mean, when I worked at the call center, I was homeless for a few weeks. And at that call center, they had showers for the employees. And when I asked why they had showers, the answer was obvious why they had showers at work. Because there are going to be people, sure, the reason the original, the intended purpose was for people that go to the gym that don't have time to shower at the gym. But the default use is for the people that are working there that are homeless. That's why they're there. But there is a lot of things in our society that we don't like to talk about. Homeless people, mentally disabled people, people who don't make enough money to be considered well off, or people, the losers. You know, someone left this comment. It's like the reward for being a loser is being a loser for the rest of your life. It kind of encompasses everything that I'm talking about because once you become homeless, you're the ultimate loser in society's. Um, uh, how do I put this? In the view of society, the ultimate punishment for being a loser is ending up homeless or living in your car and being homeless in your car. The stigma of being homeless is horrible in this country. And because it associates you with people who have substance abuse problems, who are crazy, who end up there because they just couldn't function in society. They never take into consideration that most of us, I would say more than 80% of us, are living paycheck to paycheck. We're just one paycheck from total and complete catastrophe of ending up on the street. And the people that you see on the street can't just go and ask their parents for help. In fact, I was driving my car home from the gym at lunch today, and I was stopped in front of the Arby's, and I looked over, and there was a young lady with a tattoo all the way around her neck, right, with a much taller, older guy. And they looked like a stereotypical homeless couple, right? They're just walking down the street. They've got nowhere to be. And you ask, it's like, where are their families? Well, sometimes once you become a total loser and your family doesn't want to be associated with you, no one wants to say, oh, my son's homeless in Phoenix right now. Anyone would ask, what are you doing about it? Any caring person, even a somewhat caring person, would be like, well, if it's your family, why aren't you going down there to rescue them? And the fact is, as long as you don't mention it, no one has to know that Susie Rottencrotch is on the street because you're ashamed of her. And that's the stigma with being homeless. The stigma extends to other groups as well. The mentally ill have that huge stigma over their heads. They're crazy. We can't help them. We got to lock them up in asylums. Then they closed all the asylums and now they're just wandering the streets because there's nowhere to lock them up in. Talking point number 4. Official homelessness stats focus on those in shelters or visible street or visible on the street. I don't know why it didn't add that. Or visible on the street. Encampments, ignoring the vast number of people living in cars or people who are living in soft homeless situations. This underreporting allows the government to downplay the severity of the crisis, even as it grows in plain sight. Do you think that this isn't going to get worse this year? Arizona, I just saw another article, another record eviction year for Arizona. Because if jobs are paying the minimum wage and rents are very high, food is very high, and transportation is extremely high, what are people supposed to do? The cost of working outpaces work. If you're not making that large salary, if your cost of living isn't 25% of your total of what you make, you're not making it. So that means if you're making $40,000 a year right now and the cost of living looks more like $165,000 a year, you're not going to make it. Even working multiple jobs is just not sufficient. And corporations know what they're doing. I've said this many times. It's like they know you're uncomfortable. But why would they want to have a bunch of workers that don't need them in order to survive? The survival of their workers is, how do I put this? It's not important to the people who make the rules. The C-suite doesn't care about its poor workers, or else it would pay them as if they mattered. Workers have no meaning. They have no value. That's why they would prefer attrition to retention, right? The companies don't want to retain people. They want to fire you for whatever reason they can, especially when you start getting too expensive or you start demanding things. I actually saw 2 articles today where they were talking about an employee who submitted a paid time off request a year in advance because they knew that they were going to get married. And it was denied, and then they got fired. Like my current Gen Z at his last job, when he put in his 2 weeks to start at this job, guess what? They fired him on the spot. They were just looking for an excuse to get rid of him. And today and this was going to be the second part of my talk because I want to transition into Gen Z because today he's been my employee now for like 3 months. And I know that my Gen Z people who watch this channel, are very critical of the way that I think of Gen Z because there are people who are facing impossible odds because the way that they think and the way that society functions doesn't work. And today, my Gen Z, even though I've told you guys already about this many, many times, I even had to talk to my boss about this, Gen Z admitted that his autism is very, very bad. And I mean, I've seen it since day one. He has such a hard time with dealing with every little part of his life that there are certain things he can't do. And I asked him, are you aware of when your autism is kicking in. And he said, yes, I am aware of it. And I was like, that's the first person that I've met ever who openly admitted that they're not okay. Also, admitted that I know I've mentioned this to you guys because I've seen it in all of my Gen Zs. It's the attention deficit and hyperactivity. It is terrible in some of these workers. Not in all, but it is definitely a problem of this generation where they aren't socializing, where they aren't making eye contact, where they don't know what to say in basic conversations. In fact, I had an entire cheat sheet up of things that I wanted to talk about, but I must have closed it because I had too many things to talk about. I could be a full time YouTuber very easily and have videos to make 3, 4 times a day. And I did. I made those videos while I was on vacation. And now that I just don't have time, this morning I woke up for the first time at the time that I was supposed to be at work. Not certain why. I think it's just because I'm starting my evening later now that I have to work until exactly 5 o'clock. But it's getting very difficult to do YouTube with a full time job. Because my job isn't just a standard 8 hour day. I try to make it 8 hours, but unfortunately, sometimes it turns into 8.5, 9, 10 hour days. And it's not, how do I put this? I don't work at McDonald's, so I can't just say, oh, it's time for me to punch the clock out. There are certain aspects of the job. When you reach a certain salary, your job responsibilities are much, much more defined, right? I have a lot of responsibility through my job, and I talk to a dozen people who don't work in my area every single day. Every part of this corporation that needs technology, there's one name, my name, and they need it, and they need it now. And it's just part of this this slave job, I guess I would call it, is that you have to be able to be right there when they need something instantly. Oh, I need a new system. I need this. I need that. And you just have to be literally sitting there waiting for the request to come in all day long. And that's when they come in. It's all day long. We have, oh my gosh, I don't even know how many people they have because not all the employees are counted as employees. The contractors are listed as something else. But it's a job. And until I can find a better job, I'm stuck with this job for as long as they don't throw me out. But I need to come to an end on this video. I could keep talking. I really wanted to go over the illusion of high salaries, inflation versus wage growth, and the cost of living, the psychological toll of feeling broke when you make a large salary. And that was going to be a big bullet point for me because I feel it every single day. I look at how big my paychecks are, and then I look at how the fact that they can't stretch between 2 week pay periods. Anyhow, I'm going to leave it there. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I will talk to you guys later.